Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the greatest wealth creation machines ever built. We're going to deconstruct the Buffett machine and really get to the bottom of how it all works.
All right, let's start with a picture. Think about Wall Street for a second. What do you see? It's chaos, right? People screaming, flashing numbers, pure panic. Now I want you to completely shift gears and picture a quiet office in Omaha, Nebraska. There are no screens, no frantic energy. It's just a guy sitting there, reading, thinking, and sipping on a cherry toke. That massive gap between those two worlds, that's where the real secret is hiding.
So if all that Wall Street noise and speed isn't what builds a $100 billion empire, then what does? What's really going on here? What is the actual secret behind Warren Buffett's insane level of success?
You know, if you ask most people, they'll give you the same answer. We've all heard it, right? Oh, he's just a genius stock picker. Like he has some kind of crystal ball that tells him exactly what to buy and when. It's a nice, simple story, makes for a great headline. Well, that story is also completely 100% wrong. I mean, yeah, being a good stock picker helps, but that's just a tiny piece of the puzzle. If that was all it took, we'd have thousands of Warren Buffetts running around. The real story, the truth, is so much more interesting and has a lot less to do with genius and a whole lot more to do with psychology and patience.
So let's get into the first big secret, the one that most people completely miss. It's this unstoppable snowball effect. And here's the kicker. It's not about skill, it's about time.
Okay, look at this. 99%. Let that number just hang there for a second. 99% of Warren Buffett's entire net worth was earned after his 50th birthday. Think about that. Almost all of his mind-boggling wealth was built in the second half of his life. We're all trying to plan for our future, right? But we're usually thinking about next month, next year, maybe 5 years out. This number proves Buffett isn't just playing a different game. He's playing on a completely different timeline.
This all comes down to the magic of compound interest. But honestly, calling it interest feels way too tame. It's like calling a nuclear reaction a little bit of heat. It just doesn't do it justice. The snowball analogy is perfect. Imagine a small snowball at the top of a hill. If the hill is short, it's just a bigger snowball. But if that hill is incredibly, incredibly long, it becomes an avalanche. Our brains just aren't wired for this. We think in straight lines. But compounding is exponential. The real fireworks don't go off in year 5 or even year 10. They happen in year 30, 40, 50. And Buffett's real genius? It wasn't just finding a hill with good snow, it was finding the longest hill possible and just not getting off. I mean, he started when he was just 11 years old, but look at this timeline. The real secret here isn't just the starting point, it's his uncanny ability to just survive. It's so easy for us to look at these dates, 87, 2000, 2008, and see them as just history. But I want you to actually put yourself there. Imagine it's 2008. Your life savings have just been vaporized by 50%. Every single person on TV is screaming that the world is ending. Your friends, your family, they're all panicking. Your every instinct, your lizard brain, is screaming at you to sell, get out, stop the bleeding. Buffett's superpower wasn't just ignoring that scream. It was running towards the fire. His #1 rule is never lose money, which really means you have to stay in the game. To finish first, you first have to finish. He never let himself get wiped out.
Okay, but just surviving isn't the whole story. You need a fortress to protect that snowball as it grows. And this brings us to the actual engine he built inside Berkshire Hathaway. It's a machine designed to create financial fortresses and, believe it or not, get access to free money.
So Buffett is obsessed with this idea he calls an economic moat. And it's a great visual. Think of a company's profits as a big pile of gold inside a castle. Well, what's going to happen? Barbarians, your competitors, are going to come try and steal it. A moat is that deep, wide ditch, maybe filled with crocodiles, that protects the castle. It's a durable competitive advantage, something that makes it almost impossible for anyone else to attack your profits.
And these moats come in all shapes and sizes. Take railroads. That's a physical barrier. You can't just decide to build a new railroad right next to an existing one. It's practically impossible. Or think about Coca-Cola. That's a psychological barrier. It's a brand that's been burned into our collective brains for over 100 years. You see what he's doing? He's not trying to pick the winner of some futuristic tech battle. No way. He's buying the essential, boring, unkillable toll roads of the economy.
All right, so far so good. He buys these fortress-like businesses and holds on forever. That makes sense. But this next part, this is where it gets kind of crazy. This is the financial cheat code. What if you could invest with billions and billions of dollars that wasn't even yours, and you got to use it for free?
That cheat code has a name. It's called insurance float. Think about it. When you pay your car insurance premium to a company like Geico, they get to hold on to your money. They collect billions from all their customers, and they can invest that massive pile of cash for their own profit, long before they ever have to pay out any claims. Now, a lot of smart investors use debt, or leverage, to boost their returns. But debt is dangerous. It costs you interest, and if things go south, it can wipe you out. Float? Float is like leverage with none of the risk. It's basically a giant, permanent, zero-interest loan from the rest of us, and it's what supercharges the whole Buffett machine.
So, we've got the long timeline, the economic moats, and this incredible float machine. It sounds perfect, right? But here's the thing. You could give this exact same machine to almost anyone else, and they would absolutely drive it right off a cliff. Why? Because the final piece of the puzzle, the real superpower, has nothing to do with finance or IQ. It's all about psychology. To really get this, you have to meet a little character that Buffett's mentor, Benjamin Graham, invented. His name is Mr. Market. Imagine he's your business partner, but he's a total emotional wreck. He's a manic depressive. Some days, he shows up at your door deliriously happy, screaming about how great things are, offering to buy your shares for an insane price. Then, the very next day, he's back, completely depressed, convinced the world is ending, and he's begging you to take his shares off his hands for practically nothing.
Now, most of us, we let Mr. Market dictate our feelings. When he panics, we panic. When he's giddy, we get greedy. We're on his emotional roller coaster. But Buffett? His true superpower is that he sees Mr. Market for what he is, a servant, not a master. So for the average person, a market crash means crisis, loss, panic. For Buffett, it means a sale is on. It's an opportunity. He once famously said that during a crash, he feels like an oversexed guy in a harem. And that's not just a joke, it's a window into his brain. When you see your portfolio drop 30%, your gut screams danger. His gut screams opportunity.
And this all boils down to one powerful idea, the inner scorecard. It means you judge yourself by your own standards, not by what the rest of the world is saying. Think about the dot-com bubble. He was on the cover of magazines being called a dinosaur, a has-been, because he refused to buy tech stocks. Can you imagine that pressure? Every single expert on TV is calling you an idiot. Your own clients are probably wondering if you've lost your mind. To have the conviction to sit there, stick to your guns, and just wait while the whole world calls you a fool, that's a different level. And of course, when it all came crashing down, the dinosaur was the only one left standing with a pile of cash.
So the big question is, what does this mean for you? I mean, you and I don't have billions of dollars or a giant insurance company, but the best part is, you don't need any of that. We can actually build a personal blueprint based on these exact same principles.
First things first, you have to know your circle of competence. Buffett's baseball analogy for this is just perfect. He says investing is like baseball, but with one huge difference. There are no called strikes. You can stand at the plate and watch thousands of pitches go by, and it doesn't count against you. You can literally wait all day for that one perfect pitch, right in your sweet spot. So that feeling you get, that pressure to jump on the next hot thing everyone's talking about, that's just you getting antsy and swinging at a terrible pitch in the dirt. Real power comes from saying no over and over again until you see the one thing you absolutely, positively understand.
And here's a great little mental trick to force that discipline. Imagine when you start investing, you get a punch card with only 20 slots on it. That's it. You only get to make 20 investments for your entire life. Now, how would that change things? How much more careful would you be with each decision? How much conviction would you need before you used up one of those precious punches? That's the mindset. That's how he approaches it. But after all this, you might find his ultimate advice a little surprising. This is what he told the person who will manage his wife's money after he's gone. His instructions were incredibly simple. Put 90% of it in a super low-cost S&P 500 index fund and the other 10% in short-term government bonds. That's it. Let that sink in. The greatest stock picker of all time is basically telling most of us, don't even try to pick stocks. Stop looking for the needle in the haystack. Just buy the whole haystack.
And you know what? He put his money where his mouth is. He made a very public $1 million bet. He wagered that a boring, simple S&P 500 index fund would crush a portfolio of fancy, expensive hedge funds run by supposed geniuses over a decade. And the result? It wasn't even a contest. The hedge funds got smoked. The simple, cheap, lazy approach won by a mile. He was teaching all of us a lesson. You don't win by being smarter or paying for complexity. You win with discipline and time.
So here it is, your personal Buffett protocol. Step 1, extend your timeline. You have to start thinking in decades, not days. Step 2, If you're going to buy individual stocks, hunt for those unkillable businesses with deep moats. 3. Get rid of negative float in your own life. That's high-interest debt like credit cards. It's the same powerful force of compounding, but it's working against you. 4. Be brutally honest with yourself about your circle of competence. And 5. For most of your money, just keep it simple. Bet on the long-term success of the economy with a basic index fund.
But you know, for all his mastery of money, in the end, he says that's not even the real scoreboard. He says the real measure of your success in life is how many of the people you want to have love you actually do love you. And that kind of puts it all in perspective, doesn't it? The whole point of getting your finances in order isn't just to see a number go up on a screen. It's to buy yourself freedom, the freedom to spend your time, your one non-renewable resource, with the people who matter. And that, right there, is a type of wealth that's within reach for every single one of us.